to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, a place where I interview tech leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, futurists, technologists, thought leaders, and even the occasional celebrity about how they are leveraging technology to transform their business. And today I had the huge pleasure of chatting with Sean Farrington from Pluralsight, who are a huge company. You probably know about them. And we're going to talk about getting the right tech skills in place, especially amid a time of uncertainty and layoffs and hiring freezes, etc. So essentially we're going to be talking about something that should resonate with everyone listening wherever you're located in the world. And we'll explore some of the ongoing challenges around hiring, the role of internal skill development in plugging gaps, as well as discussing the scramble for tech talent and how companies must take on high revenue projects, bring new products to market and keep customers happy, as well as all the other stuff. So businesses are going to need expanding skill sets of existing teams rather than just relying on new hire or outsourcing of work to support them in delivering those projects. And we'll also talk about capitalising on the hunger to learn more about how 75% of technologists determine whether to stay at their company, partly based on how dedicated their employer is to development opportunities. Because I think we always get carried away with the new shiny technology solution, but it's people and actually creating a culture of learning and putting that culture of learning in place alongside technology. That's where the magic happens, and it doesn't need to cost a fortune. But before we start today's interview, I just wanted to give a quick mention to our sponsors, because this month the podcast is brought to you by Flipper, which is the #1 marketplace to buy and sell online businesses and startups. So do you run your own online business? And have you ever considered selling your website, your store, your tech, or your app? Because with world-class combined matching technology, dedicated brokers and end-to-end services, all at the most efficient price, Flipper is making it simple to sell your online business. So to get a free valuation, visit my friends at flipper.com/techtalks, where each month thousands of online business owners exit with Flipper. Again, visit flipper.com/techtalks. But enough from me. Wherever you're listening in the world right now, I'm going to ask you to buckle up and hold on tight, because it's time for me to beam your ears all the way to the UK, where you can join me and Sean Farrington in conversation today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, Neil, it's great to be with you today. My name's Sean Farrington. I'm I think the official title is Executive Vice President of EMEA for Pluralsight, which is, and Pluralsight is a tech workforce development platform, global in reach, but I run the EMEA part of that business, so Europe, Middle East and Africa.
Fantastic. And I'd love to take you back in time for a moment. Can you remember where your passion for technology came from, or just something that ignited a spark and would put you on the path you're on today? Because everyone's got one of these origin stories. So I'm curious, what's yours?
Oh, I don't know if it's geeky or it's sad. It's probably one of the two, but actually two things, because it depends if you call these technology. You can correct me if I'm off the base here. But the two things, the first one that immediately sprang to my mind is I used to love playing chess.
Yeah,
and I'm a child of I was born in 1961. Maybe that will give the context now about where we are. So, and in the 70s, there were a thing called chess computers started to come onto the scene. Late 70s.
Yeah.
And I bought one of those, and it was literally one where you had to use your own chessboard, and you would key in the coordinates of your move, and then the chess computer, in inverted commas, would think and come back with their move as in response to your move. And that I was intrigued by this because I wanted to play a bit of chess. But I quickly worked out that obviously it was very limited in the options that it could work through. And I started beating the chess computer on a regular basis because I just spent my time working out what the computer would think are the options based on my move. And I sort of quickly overcame the chess computer, which is not an indication of my prowess at chess at all. It's more an indication of how rudimentary the computing was when I first sort of engaged with it. And from there, I've always been intrigued by technology. Probably the next second most sort of memorable thing from my youth was I bought one of those Cambridge Scientific, the programmable Cambridge calculators, scientific calculators, and calculated. There was a game you could play on it about doing a lunar landing, but it was all numbers based, and it would come back with a number of what your speed of re-entry was to the moon's atmosphere, etc. So yeah, so there are my kind of sort of origin stories of why I enjoy technology so much.
And I think they tick both boxes of tech and geeky there. I absolutely love both of them. And of course, from those formative years, that path would eventually lead you to Pluralsight, which is a workforce development platform. So you can tell me a little bit more about the company and the kind of problems that it set out to solve with technology.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so our co-founder and current CEO, Aaron Sconnard, he founded the company based on his experiences. So he himself was a certified Microsoft training partner, and he used to travel originally the United States. The company is actually based out of Salt Lake City in Utah, but he originally started traveling the United States, as computing was taking off really, and Microsoft as a brand was really establishing itself. And he quickly realized there was a huge demand for people to learn about tech and technology. And he started traveling the world, literally. And eventually, he and his co-founding partner decided that it was, the only limit to the success of the business was actually their ability to reach the pupils, if you like, the students, the learners. And that then was really the origin of saying, well, if we could do this online and deliver it online in some way, that would give us truly global reach. And at the time, cloud was starting to establish itself. We're now in sort of 2010, and that was really where the idea was to put technology, particularly technology, sort of content for technologists, onto the cloud and give learners access to a platform through which they could improve and upgrade their technology skills in particular. So it spread from Microsoft to all things technology in terms of, IT, so cyber, cloud, AI, as it is now, data, etc., and obviously software DevOps. And that was really where the idea came from, and it's evolved over the last decade into what Pluralsight is today. So we focus on developing technology workforces and providing them with the upskilling capabilities and also the management capabilities for technology workforces, so you can understand where your skills are and where your gaps are, and then close those gaps.
And then fast forward to present day, and of course, with the UK struggling to fill roles in July, it's clear that there's a ongoing economic certainty in the country. It's taking its toll on hiring. In fact, even tech giants in Silicon Valley, such as Google, Microsoft, and Facebook, are famously cutting headcounts or pausing on new hires. So I'm curious, how are you seeing the ripple impacts of these global trends impacting the workforce and employment landscape? Is that trickling down now?
We certainly see it, and we feel it, and we hear it from our customers. And it's that classic. The irony is, not many months ago we were all worried about the Great Resignation and if you like the mobility and the flexibility that the pandemic had created for technology workforce in particular, that they could become very sort of temporary in their engagement with a business. They could hop around businesses very easily, and this kind of led to a number of people resigning from their current role and looking for another one. Now, sadly, with the recession, and I think being particularly felt in the UK, but across Europe as well, and globally, it's turned to really being a recession, and the workforce is operating in a different mode. As you say, there are layoffs coming through, etc. But what that leads to, and the experience we have with our customers, is they want to do a couple of things. The obvious one in a recession, when you're challenged from a cost perspective, is how do we become more productive, is the first thing. But secondly is also, how do we really protect our most valuable assets? And in a technology workforce setting, that is obviously your people. And at Pluralsight, we help achieve both of those things, because the first one is about ensuring that you have the most up-to-date skills available to you as an engineer so that you can build products more efficiently, more effectively. And the second one is investing in individuals so that they want to stay with the company. They see value with their current organization, their talent that you really want to keep within your organization and build muscle, as we say, during a recession. And Pluralsight, again, helps with that. So we're actually seeing a sort of increased interest in what it is we provide, because it's helping to really protect the assets, if we could call people an asset, but they're the intellectual capital that businesses have got, because in the recession they want to make the most of that, and they want to protect the most valuable elements of that.
And it's interesting you said there about building muscle, and I think that is so important and often missed, because no matter what the big tech trends are at the moment, and how the global economic uncertainty, etc. Park all that to one side for a moment. As we enter January 2023, every business has another challenge, which is take on high revenue projects, bring in new products to market, and keep their customers happy and keep meeting those evolving customer demands and expectations. So can you expand on why tech talent remains critical, and how business essentially have got to change and move with that, haven't they?
Well, I mean, we only have to look back into the pandemic, and it's a merely, less than 36 months ago, we were moving into lockdown. I mean, I remember it well. It was St. Patrick's Day. I was in Dublin with my family, and the day before St. Patrick's Day, Ireland went into full lockdown. And what we experienced was that as a business, we experienced, as I think many others did, the first thing was the shock and the pause and the contemplation about, oh my goodness, how do we deal with what we see in front of us? Then what we saw was the really creative businesses leaning into it and saying, okay, how do we make the most of this? How do we give people the best possible outcome they can? What do we need to do in order to continue to deliver our products, our services, our experiences, whatever it was, to a locked down population of locked down customer base? And the realization was, of course, it was technology. And the businesses that moved quickly and recognized the need to build that muscle were the ones that thrived through the pandemic, in terms of they transformed their businesses, they moved their business models into a digital first sort of capability. And they survived the pandemic, and they came out of the pandemic stronger and more efficient and effective, and being able, and with more sort of innovative offerings available to their customers, whoever they should be, whether they were sort of retail delivering to end, you and me as end user customers, or whether they were part of a supply chain in a business or a manufacturing business. But those that leveraged technology quickly and made those investments were the ones who were able to take fuller advantage of opportunity as things kind of unfurled, and we became used to that lockdown experience for such a long period. And I think the same thing applies now, exactly the same thing. The businesses that look at this and say, okay, it's a challenge, but how do we make sure that coming out of the challenge, we're best placed to take advantage of the inevitable opportunity? Because there's always, the sun is always going to rise. We just need to be ready for when it does, so that we can quickly get out of the blocks and take advantage of the market opportunity. So I think it's very, I think those businesses, we can see they are making those investments now and thinking about what next in terms of innovation.
I was getting flashbacks listening to your story there, because at that date that you mentioned, I was in Chicago at a tech conference, and I remember clear as day, they said, we're not dyeing the River Green. The St. Patrick's Day parades are all cancelled, and you've got 48 hours to get out of the country. And I remember flying home on a plane with about 30 people on there, just thinking, well, this is just bizarre. We forget just how much has changed in that time, haven't we? Oh,
yeah, absolutely. And there are lessons that were learned. I mean, without being too controversial, I think that, Arcadia Group, if they had thought differently, they would still be here today. But as a result, we've got Boohoo and ASOS who were able to, pivot and take full advantage and provide continue to provide the service. I mean, they weren't taking advantage. They were just able to continue to do business, and people wanted to be able to continue to have some normality in their lives, and they were able to provide that service, whereas those that couldn't really struggled, and unfortunately, many fell by the wayside.
And I think another big change is the importance of a culture of continuous learning. I think it's something we all know about. People get often distracted by the latest shiny technology solution, but without that culture and the culture of learning, it's kind of a waste of time. But I'm curious, do you think it is a myth that putting a culture of learning in place just costs businesses a fortune? Because in some circles, that is the kind of the school of thought. Or are you seeing that change?
I'm seeing it change. I'd love to see it change more quickly. I think that the realization is there that it's not just technology on its own is not a solution. Yeah. Even, our technology on its own is not a solution. It thrives and really sort of drives faster value when you have that culture of learning, when leaders in particular effectively give permission to the rest of the organization to invest in themselves, to improve their skills, and then use those skills to the benefit of the business. And the businesses that are really creating those cultures are not only visible in the marketplace in terms of their success, but they're also attracting the talent. People are moving towards them because they want to work inside an organization that values them as an individual contributor. And one of the ways you do that, of course, is by giving over time to the individual for them to spend learning and developing their skills. So yeah, I mean, I think it's becoming more prevalent. I don't think it's anywhere near as prevalent as it can be, and so the full value is yet to come. But it's a thing about leadership for me. It really is important that leaders recognize it, and those that do really do create very exciting cultures in their businesses that people just want to give more to and are more productive and happier and more satisfied in.
And I suspect that everybody listening has got so many examples of how their company, their business, their employer are doing things wrong. But do you have any examples of businesses that you're working with that have got it mastered, that are doing it right and also reaping the benefits at the other end as a result?
Yeah, there's one that really does stand out for me. And in fact, I was at a digital transformation conference just yesterday at Olympia in London, and I was thinking about them in terms of what they've achieved in terms of the investments they've made. It's BT, huge organization, but they've done this remarkably well. They needed to ensure their team's skills were up to date in technologies such as AWS and cloud, Google Cloud, etc., and also in the latest software development practices, because they were looking not just in the, if you like, the near term and medium term of cloud, etc., but also even sort of beyond that into areas like quantum computing and AI and ML, and how those will really impact and affect the types of products that they engineer and bring to market for their customers like you and me, and businesses across the whole of the UK and Europe and ultimately globally. And to deliver that skills transformation, they realized they needed to build that culture, and they used Pluralsight and partnered with us to develop that a series of programs, if you will, that not only encouraged employees onto the platform, but also really engendered that collaborative spirit, that sense of community with a common shared set of goals and outcomes that the employees were being encouraged to engage in, and could see the path between their individual skills and improving their skills and the investment they made on an individual basis, and how they would help contribute towards the successful outcomes on behalf of BT as a global business. And they've done a fantastic job in that. And they found that 92% of people reported that Pluralsight had a positive impact on the quality of their work. And BT has, they've seen a total ROI of around, this is measured ROI of almost £7 million in productivity and time gains because of all of the training initiatives that they put in place around these kind of, driving towards more modernizing the technology and the practices inside the business. So really, really great example of how to do it right, in my opinion.
And you guys work with so many big businesses all around the world. And when you're speaking to these customers, they're going to expect you to have all the answers and make that path a little bit easier. But I'm curious, what is it that keeps you up at night? And how do you keep things like your curiosity, open-mindedness and collaborative spirit alive? Because it is a battle, an everyday battle in these uncertain times. I'm just curious how you keep that alive in yourself.
Yeah, it's a great, it's a really good question. And I could kind of, I could put it, some sort of overarching business type response to that, business leader response to that. But actually, I think about the quality of life for me and for my family and for the friends around me and what I see. And what keeps me awake at night is thinking, what happens when something like the next pandemic comes around the corner? How do we deal with that? And for me, technology and getting businesses to modernize and be as best prepared as they possibly can be for the unknown and the uncertainty that lies in front of all of us is key. And then I think about the role that Pluralsight in developing technology workforces, the role we play in making sure businesses are ready and able to deal with those challenges when they come around the corner. And that's what really excites me. And from helping a business initially engage with the platform to help maybe a small technology business with 10 or 15 technologists that they just want to provide some upskilling to, all the way through to major enterprises who are seeking to reinvent themselves. We have car manufacturers at the moment seeking to reinvent themselves as software development houses, and we're helping them make that transition. We're helping them become better at providing you and me with forms of transport we're going to rely on in a non-carbon world in the next decade and beyond. So that keeps me engaged, but it also keeps me up at night. So we need to do our job really well in order for other businesses to be as well prepared as they can be for what lies in front of all of us.
And for any business leaders or startup founders that are just starting out in their career, you've seen so many big changes throughout your own career. You've experienced everything from the dot-com bubble to a global pandemic to heading for another big change with Web3 and the challenges of heading towards a non-carbon world. I'm curious, what have been the biggest lessons that you've learned as you reflect and look back throughout your career in tech?
I would sort of put it, the first thing is for me, and because in the first third of my working life, I've been around long enough to sort of categorize it in that way. The first third, I spent 15 years in the British Army as an officer.
Yeah.
And I've seen firsthand the impact that leadership can have on individuals, on the performance of an organization, for good and for bad.
Yeah.
And I've seen the same organization with all its changes, literally the leader of that organization move from being a reasonably performing organization to a top performing organization. So for me, leadership is key, and thinking in terms of how can I become a better leader is part of that for me, because I think that can have the quickest impact in terms of performance and dealing with the unknown as well. That's the first thing. The second thing is, for me personally, what I strive to do in leadership is do two things. The first one is provide as much context as I can to the people in my organization so that they understand that they understand as much as I can reasonably give them about the background and the backdrop in which we're currently making decisions as a business. And I think that helps people move more confidently and with more speed inside the business when decisions are made and that we move from, if you like, planning into execution phase. There's confidence. People understand the backdrop. They've got the context. So when the plan is then formulated and communicated, which is the third key element, clear communication, simple communication, that the organization moves to action more quickly and with greater confidence. And I think those things, so leadership, giving people context, and then clearly communicating the plan, are three elements that I think have served me well in my career, for sure.
And it's interesting you say there, provide as much context as you can, because if we zoom out, I think so many of the problems that we're seeing in the world right now and arguments that breaking out online and offline are often because of this almost, I don't know, soundbite world we're living in, where context is completely removed. So we need more context in the world, don't we?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And it is that thing, I suppose there's never judge a book by its cover kind of sprang to mind when you were saying that. It's like you can have a visceral response to something, but you really do need to seek the other person's context. And it's one of the values that we have at Pluralsight is making sure you understand the context of the person on the other side of the discussion, the decision, because you come to a better outcome, for sure.
100%. I read an interview with, I think, a member of the CIA many years ago, and they were saying that the question they were asked were, what is the biggest thing you've learned in your work? And they said, nobody thinks they're the bad guy. And I think that just sums it up perfectly, doesn't it? Because everyone's got their own reasons, everyone's got their own stories, their own context, and it's understanding that before you can move forward. So
true. So very true.
Now, we started the podcast today talking about your origin story, a small boy playing with that computerized chess set in a very primitive form. And as we look back on your life and your career now, I'm going to ask you, what was the soundtrack to that story? Is there a particular song that means anything to you that we can add to our Spotify playlist? This is your desert island this moment. So what song would you like us to add and why?
Right. Well, I will give you a chance to work it out for yourself. So it's ticking away the moments that make up a small day. And that is a song off an album by Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. And it's Time.
Yes, what a great...
And yeah, it resonates so much with me about, the lyrics of the music's wonderful. I love electric guitar, rock music, but the lyrics resonate as well. They speak to me about, making the most of every single day of, thinking that, the sun comes round and another day dawns, you're another day older. But that comes a fresh day, a new opportunity. And I know somebody once said, I don't have an alarm clock. I think it was actually Bear Grylls. He was interviewed by Louis Theroux recently. And he said, I don't have an alarm clock. I have an opportunity clock. And I thought, and I, in some ways it's a bit cheesy, but in another way, I think, the mindset and that approach to life is absolutely the right one. And I can totally subscribe to that. And that song by Pink Floyd reminds me of that every time I listen to it. So that's it. Time, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon.
Wow, great song and a classic album too, to boot. So I'll get that added straight to our Spotify playlist. And for all things our Pluralsight, what's the best way of finding out more information, exploring the topics we've talked about today, and contacting your team? What's the best starting point for everything?
As ever, the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
Pluralsight.com is the place, is the entry point. Or you can speak to me directly on Twitter at @sfarrington. There are two Sean Farringtons on Twitter. The other one is the BBC Radio 5 Live business reporter. We are actually connected to each other. We share a sort of an Irish heritage, but he for some reason has got Sean Farrington, and I've had to settle with S Farrington on Twitter. But those are the two ways. Go to the website or reach out to me directly via Twitter. Very happy to carry on the conversation for those who would like to.
I'm in contact with 3 other Neil Hugheses out there, and we all get each other's emails, messages, and I've kind of connected with them now. I've created this bizarre universe of other Neil Hughes. I'm curious, do you get any approaches or messages for the other Sean Farrington?
I do occasionally, yeah. There are sort of recommendations. What do you might want to deal with this one, Sean, on your next show, and I have to go back and say you don't want me, you want this one, and I kind of link the person to the correct Sean Farrington. The only claim to fame I have is that he was aware of me because we got in contact with each other actually in the pandemic, because whenever he Googled Sean Farrington, my photo was the one that came up ahead of his. And he was really miffed about that. I think it's no longer the case, but it was for a little while. I think Google's algorithm had got completely skewy in terms of who was the most appropriate Sean Farrington to present to people. But there you go.
Well, I'm hopeful that when we share this podcast out and I use appropriate images, that we will restore you as the number one Sean Farrington on Google Images.
That would be great. That anything to annoy Sean Farrington gets a vote from me.
Well, it's been a huge pleasure chatting with you today. There is a lot of talk about the job market drying up there, but as we were talking about, businesses must take on high revenue projects, bring in new products to market and keep customers happy. And as part of that, you need not just technology, you need people and a culture of learning. So thank you so much for sharing that, your powerful origin story, which I will always remember, and leaving us with a great tune too. So thanks for sharing that with me today, Sean.
Brilliant. Thanks, Neil. Really enjoyed it.
I think I also need to give Sean a big thank you for his patience today, because we had a couple of live technical issues and a problem with my dog, who was feeling under the weather, all going on at the same time. And I've got to commend Sean. He was incredibly gracious and patient throughout. And one of the things I really loved was, because while we're having trouble with internet connectivity, Zoom and Microsoft Teams, I just love the live troubleshooting of issues, bouncing ideas between each other as we look to find a solution together. And I think that level of problem solving and analytical nature that just kind of kicks in, I think it never leaves you once you've worked in the tech industry. But of course, what did you think about our conversation today? And the fact that, yes, businesses have employment and budget challenges right now, but they still have to implement high revenue projects, bring new products to market, and keep their customers happy. As always, email me, let me know your thoughts by getting me at techblogwriteroutlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just at Neil C. Hughes. We'll keep this conversation going, but it's time for me to go now. I'm going to listen to that classic track that Sean left us with, while also trying to get Sean Farrington from Pluralsight number one on Google Images. And I know in a few weeks' time, a few of you will be Googling Sean Farrington on Google Images to see what happens. So I hope you'll join me in that. We'll have a bit of fun with that. But tomorrow we've got another guest talking about another serious issue in tech and how technology is transforming their industry. So hopefully you'll join me again then. But as for today, it's the end of the episode. So thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.